Peace and grace to you, beloved child of God. You didn't end up here by accident. I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it to sound mystical. I say it because something in you has been asking a quiet question for a long time. Am I actually seen? Not admired. Not noticed for what you do. Seen for who you are when nobody is applauding. This message is for the person who has learned how to be strong in silence. For the one who keeps choosing integrity when nobody would blame you for giving up. For the one who has loved deeply, lost painfully, healed privately, and kept going anyway. The title of this message is not poetic language. Your future spouse learned something about you and can't stop thinking about it. That doesn't mean someone is obsessing over your appearance. It means something about your core reached them. Something they weren't looking for, but now can't unsee. And before you dismiss that idea, hear me clearly. This is not about fantasy. This is about recognition. Scripture shows us again and again that God connects people first through the Spirit, not the surface. Ruth didn't try to impress Boaz. Esther didn't chase the king. Rebecca didn't audition for Isaac. God revealed, and the revealing changed everything. What your future spouse discovered about you wasn't something you advertised. It was something you carry. And once someone sees that, they don't go back to life the same way. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 strategic truths. Not vague encouragement. Not emotional hype. Clear, grounded insight into what was seen, why it matters, and what it's doing to the other person's heart and direction. Stay with me until the end, because the final point will show you how to respond without striving and how to stay aligned while God finishes what He started. If this kind of teaching speaks to you, take a moment now and subscribe. Not for numbers, so you don't miss what's coming next. Every message here is designed to strengthen your discernment, heal your identity, and prepare you for the kind of love that lasts. Now let's begin. Number 1. They recognized your character before your appearance. What your future spouse noticed first wasn't what most people notice. It wasn't the way you looked on your best day. It wasn't how you present yourself when you're confident and rested and feeling strong. They noticed who you are when nothing is curated. Character reveals itself in moments that don't feel important at the time. How you respond when plans fall apart. How you treat someone who can't give you anything back. How you speak when nobody is correcting you. How you carry disappointment without becoming bitter. That's what they saw. And it stopped them. Because most people are impressive in public and careless in private. Most people know how to attract but not how to sustain. Most people can create interest but not safety. You didn't try to stand out. You didn't lead with charm. You didn't oversell yourself. You simply lived from a place of integrity. Proverbs 11 verse 3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them." Integrity isn't loud. It guides quietly. They saw that you don't change your values based on who's watching. That your yes means yes. That your no doesn't come with guilt or drama. That you don't manipulate situations to stay liked. And here's why that matters so deeply. A future spouse isn't just looking for someone to love. They're looking for someone they won't have to monitor. Someone they won't have to guess with. Someone they won't have to constantly recover from. Your character told them, this person is safe. That realization doesn't spark fireworks. It sparks respect. And respect lasts longer than chemistry. They noticed how you hold boundaries without cruelty. How you don't overshare to bond faster. How you don't chase validation when you feel unseen. That takes strength. And strength like that is rare. You may not even realize how countercultural that is. In a world that rewards loudness, you stayed grounded. In a culture that confuses attention with worth, you stayed rooted. In spaces where cutting corners is normal, you stayed clean. They felt that, and it forced them to look at themselves. Because when someone with real character enters your orbit, it exposes where you've been compromising. It raises the standard without saying a word. It makes excuses feel thin. They started asking questions they hadn't asked before. Am I living with intention? Am I becoming someone worthy of this kind of person? Would I protect or damage someone like them? That's not infatuation. That's awakening. Psalm 15 asks, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? and then it answers with character traits, not talents. Truthfulness, integrity, faithfulness, self-control. That's the beauty they saw in you. Not perfection, but alignment. You don't abandon yourself to keep peace. You don't betray your convictions to avoid being alone. You don't harden your heart to survive. You chose to stay whole. And that choice left a mark on them. They realized you are not someone to play with, not someone to rush, not someone to approach casually. You're someone who requires maturity. And here's the part you need to hear clearly. Your character didn't just attract them. It slowed them down. Because deep down, they know that entering your life halfway would cost them more than staying away. They know that showing up unhealed would damage something sacred. They know that loving you requires intention, not impulse. That's why they think about you when they're alone. Not with excitement alone, but with seriousness, with caution, with reverence. They're not imagining moments. They're imagining responsibility. And that's significant. Because attraction asks, do I want you? But character recognition asks, can I honor you? You showed them that you don't just want connection. You want covenant. You want consistency. You want something that can survive stress, silence, and seasons. And now they're aware that if they step toward you, they can't stay the same. That's why your presence lingers in their mind. Not because you demanded attention, but because your life quietly asked a question they can't ignore. Are you ready to live with this level of truth? Number 2. They felt peace around you, and it exposed the noise in their life. What unsettled your future spouse wasn't intensity. It was calm. They didn't feel a rush around you. They didn't feel the need to impress. They didn't feel pulled into performance or emotional urgency. They felt settled. And that's rare. Most connections are built on stimulation. Quick laughter, fast bonding, high emotion that feels exciting but burns out just as fast. What they felt with you was different. It didn't spike their nervous system. It regulated it. Proverbs 17 verse 27 says, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." That evenness lives in you. You don't rush conversation to fill silence. You don't create drama to feel alive. You don't mistake intensity for intimacy. And when someone encounters that kind of presence, it does something unexpected. It makes everything else feel loud. After being around you, they return to spaces that once felt normal and suddenly noticed how draining they were. Conversations full of sarcasm but no substance. Relationships built on convenience instead of care. Noise disguised as connection. Your peace became a mirror. It reflected the inner chaos they had learned to tolerate. Isaiah 32 verse 17 says, "The fruit of that righteousness will be peace. Its effect will be quietness and confidence forever." That's what they felt around you. Not anxiety, not confusion, clarity. They could think. They could breathe. They could be present. And here's what's important to understand. Peace doesn't just comfort, confronts. Because once someone experiences real peace, they can't unknow what unrest feels like. They began noticing how often they live in reaction. How many of their choices are driven by distraction. How rarely they feel grounded. And then your name surfaced again. Not in fantasy, in reflection. They started associating you with rest, with emotional safety, with the feeling of being accepted without being absorbed. That's powerful. Because many people offer excitement. Few people offer sanctuary. Jesus said in Matthew 11 verse 29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Peace always points back to God. Your presence carried that tone. Not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. You've done inner work. You've learned to sit with yourself. You've learned not to outsource your worth. And that shows. You don't pull people into your wounds. You don't make others responsible for your healing. You don't project unresolved pain onto connection. That maturity is felt long before it's understood. Your future spouse didn't just enjoy being around you. They felt safe being themselves. And that scared them. Because peace exposes the cost of staying the same. It asks questions like, why am I constantly tired? Why do my relationships feel heavy? Why do I avoid stillness? Being near you forced them to confront patterns they've been avoiding. And instead of blaming you for that discomfort, they respected you for it. They realized you don't need chaos to feel alive. You don't need emotional turbulence to feel close. You don't need control to feel secure. That realization changed how they see love. They're now measuring connections differently. Not by excitement, by sustainability. They're thinking about what kind of life they actually want to live, what kind of home they want to build, what kind of partner they need to become. And your peace became the reference point. That's why they can't stop thinking about you. Not because you overwhelmed them, but because you grounded them. You showed them that love doesn't have to feel anxious to be real. That connection doesn't have to hurt to be meaningful. That calm isn't boring. It's mature. They're now sitting with that truth, letting it challenge their habits, letting it reshape their expectations, letting it mature them. And whether they realize it yet or not, they're being prepared. Because peace like yours doesn't pull people toward you by force. It draws them by clarity. And clarity changes lives. Number 3. They realized you carry depth not everyone can reach. At some point, something shifted in the way they saw you. You stopped feeling like a pleasant presence and started feeling significant. They realized you have depth. Not the kind people talk about to sound interesting. The kind that comes from living, losing, healing, and choosing not to become hard. Depth shows up in how you listen, in the way you pause before you respond, in how you ask questions that aren't about filling silence but about understanding. They noticed you don't skim life. You go beneath the surface. And that's confronting, because depth demands presence. Can't be rushed. Can't be faked. Most people are used to staying on the surface of things. Light conversations. Shared distractions. Connections that feel good but never go far. With you, that wasn't possible. Not because you pushed, but because your way of being invited honesty. Proverbs 20 verse 5 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." You carry that kind of insight. They felt drawn to open up, to slow down, to say things they don't usually say. And then they noticed something else. You didn't rush them when they shared. You didn't use their vulnerability as currency. You didn't try to fix them to feel important. You held space. That's not common. Depth like yours doesn't come from curiosity alone. It comes from having faced your own heart. You've sat with uncomfortable truths. You've processed grief instead of burying it. You've allowed God to refine you instead of distract you. And it shows. Your future spouse sensed that engaging with you would require honesty. Real honesty. Not confessions made for sympathy, but truth told for growth. That realization did two things at once. It attracted them, and it intimidated them, because depth doesn't tolerate masks. Around you, pretending feels pointless. Performing feels exhausting. Avoidance feels obvious. You didn't call them out. You didn't analyze them. Your depth simply revealed the gap between who they are and who they're becoming. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 12 says, "Wisdom preserves those who have it." Your wisdom is quiet, but it preserves. They began to understand that knowing you casually would be impossible. You're not someone you half know. You're not someone who fits into small talk and shallow rhythms. You require intention. That's why they've been thinking more deeply about you than they expected. They're replaying conversations, not for excitement, but for meaning. They're reflecting on what you said weeks ago and realizing it landed later. They're recognizing that your words carry weight because they're rooted in lived truth. You're not trying to be deep. You just are. And depth like that has a cost. It means not everyone can meet you there. It means some people will admire you from a distance instead of stepping closer. It means others will feel exposed and withdraw. Your future spouse felt that tension. They sensed that approaching you would require growth, that loving you would require presence, that building with you would require maturity. And that's where the shift happened. They stopped seeing you as an option. They started seeing you as a responsibility. Not in a heavy way, in a sacred way. Someone with your depth isn't meant to be rushed into. They're meant to be honored. They realized you're not here to entertain loneliness. You're here to share life. And life shared at depth is transformative. That's why they can't stop thinking about you. Not because you dazzled them, but because you challenged them. You reminded them of parts of themselves they've neglected. You awakened desires for something more meaningful than surface connection. You stirred a hunger for growth, truth, and emotional honesty. And once that hunger wakes up, it doesn't go back to sleep easily. You didn't seduce them. You summoned them into awareness, into reflection, into readiness. And that kind of impact lingers. Number 4. They understood you are rare, and it changed their sense of timing. There comes a moment when recognition turns into urgency. Not panic, not pressure. A quiet awareness that says, this isn't common. This matters. That's what happened when they realized how rare you are. Not rare because you're flawless. Rare because of the way your qualities exist together in one person. You're gentle but not weak. Strong but not hardened. Open but not careless. Independent but not guarded. Most people lean too far in one direction. You learned balance the hard way. That balance caught their attention because it's not manufactured. It's formed through experience, faith, and self-respect. Song of Solomon 6 verse 8 says, there may be 60 queens and 80 concubines, and virgins beyond number. But my dove, my perfect one, is unique. Uniqueness isn't about being better. It's about being singular. They realized there aren't many people like you. And once that realization settles, the way someone approaches you changes. You stopped feeling interchangeable. You stopped feeling replaceable. You stopped feeling like someone they could circle back to later. They understood something important. Opportunities are many, but alignment is rare. They've met attractive people before. They've felt chemistry before. They've had connections that felt exciting. But none of those carried the same weight. Because you don't just fit what they want. You challenge who they are. And that's what made timing suddenly matter. They started thinking in terms of ready instead of someday. They began noticing the gap between their intentions and their preparation. They started feeling the tension of delay. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 says, there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. They sensed this was not a casual season. You represented a window, not a deadline imposed by you, a moment revealed by awareness. They realized that approaching you half-present would be dishonoring, that stepping forward without clarity would risk losing something valuable, that waiting too long could cost them the chance to build something real. This didn't make them anxious. It made them sober. Rare people don't create pressure. They create responsibility. Your consistency made them notice how inconsistent others felt. Your depth made surface connections feel empty. Your peace made chaos unattractive. And suddenly, the idea of later didn't feel safe anymore. They began asking themselves hard questions. What am I doing with my time? Am I becoming the kind of person who can sustain this? Would I be an addition or a disruption to their life? Those are not the questions of infatuation. They're the questions of discernment. They realize that if they step toward you, it has to be intentional. Not impulsive. Not confused. Not driven by loneliness. You deserve someone present. Someone clear. Someone who knows why they're choosing you. And they know it. Proverbs 31 verse 10 says, a wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Worth changes how people move. They started guarding the idea of you, not talking about you lightly, not treating the connection casually, holding it with respect. They also became more aware of competition, not in a jealous way, in a realistic way. They know someone else could see what they've seen. Someone else could recognize your value. Someone else could step forward with courage. That awareness doesn't create fear, creates resolve. You're not rare because of scarcity. You're rare because of refinement. You didn't become this version of yourself by accident. You became it through choices. Choices to heal instead of harden. Choices to grow instead of settle. Choices to wait instead of rush. They see that now. And it changed how they view time. They're less interested in distractions. less tolerant of shallow dynamics, more focused on becoming steady. Because rare connections require preparation. They're not thinking, how do I impress them? They're thinking, how do I approach this with honor? That's why movement feels slow but intentional. That's why silence doesn't mean indifference. That's why distance doesn't mean disinterest. It means they're weighing something valuable. You are not a moment to consume. You are a future to consider. And that recognition is shaping their decisions right now, even if you can't see it yet. Number 5. They're being pushed into healing because you can't be met from a wounded place. At some point, admiration turned inward. They stopped just thinking about you and started examining themselves. Not out of insecurity, out of honesty, because they realized something important. You can't be met from a wounded place. You can't be loved well by someone who refuses to heal. You can't be approached casually by someone still bleeding. And they know it. You didn't tell them to heal. You didn't demand growth. Your life simply made it obvious. Being near you revealed where they've been compensating instead of transforming. Where they've been distracting instead of addressing. Where they've been surviving instead of becoming whole. Psalm 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Healing isn't shameful. Avoiding it is costly. Your future spouse felt the cost. They noticed patterns they've normalized. Unresolved grief. Old betrayals. Emotional armor disguised as strength. And suddenly, those patterns didn't feel manageable anymore. Because you don't reward dysfunction. You don't romanticize brokenness. You don't confuse trauma with depth. Your presence communicated a truth without words. Come healed, or don't come at all. That's not arrogance. That's wisdom. You've done the work. Or you're actively doing it. You've faced your shadows. You've sat with God in uncomfortable places. And it shows. You don't cling. You don't control. You don't collapse when connection feels uncertain. That level of emotional steadiness exposes instability. Not to condemn it. To invite transformation. Your future spouse realized that loving you would require honesty about their pain. Not dumping it on you. Not hiding it behind charm. But actually dealing with it. That realization is uncomfortable. Healing disrupts familiar coping mechanisms. It removes excuses. It demands responsibility. But it also creates hope. Because for the first time they can see what healing is for. Not just self-improvement. Not just personal peace. Alignment. You represent a life that isn't built on emotional survival. You represent a relationship that doesn't revolve around fixing or rescuing. You represent mutual wholeness. That's worth the work. James 5 verse 16 says, "Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed." Healing begins with truth. They're beginning to tell the truth. First to themselves, then to God. They're revisiting old memories they avoided. Confronting fears they buried. Acknowledging habits that kept them stuck. Not because you pressured them, but because you inspired them. You made healing feel purposeful. They don't want to bring half of themselves into something sacred. They don't want to ask you to carry weight that isn't yours. They don't want to repeat cycles that already cost them peace. So they're slowing down, getting honest, letting God into rooms they've kept locked. This process doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet. Private prayers, hard conversations, intentional boundaries. It looks like choosing growth when nobody is applauding. That's why progress feels invisible to you. Healing work happens underground before it ever shows up in action. Isaiah 61 verse 3 speaks of God giving a crown of beauty instead of ashes. But ashes come first. They're in that stage now, letting go of what no longer fits. Releasing defenses that once felt necessary. Relearning how to be emotionally present. And here's the key part. They're not healing to earn you. They're healing because you revealed what's possible. You reminded them that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. That closeness doesn't require self-betrayal. That partnership can feel safe. That vision is pulling them forward. You became a reference point for health. A standard they don't want to fall below. A picture of what connection can look like when both people are whole. That's why they can't approach you lightly. Because you're not just someone they like. You're someone who changed the direction of their inner life. And healing like that takes time. But it also leads somewhere real. Number 6. They're wrestling with fear because loving you would mean change. At this stage, something very human is happening inside them. Desire is meeting fear. Not fear of you. Fear of what loving you would require. You didn't intimidate them with confidence. You challenged them with consequence. Because they understand now that choosing you wouldn't just add something to their life. It would reorder it. And that's where fear enters. Not the kind that runs away. The kind that pauses and counts the cost. Luke 14 verse 28 says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost?" That's what they're doing. They're realizing that loving you would require consistency, not convenience. Presence, not partial effort. Growth, not comfort. You're not someone they can fit into the leftover spaces of their life. You require intention. That awareness is heavy, but it's also clarifying. They've lived long enough to know the damage of entering something unprepared. They've seen what happens when people promise more than they can sustain. They don't want to be that person with you. So fear shows up. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing freedom. Fear of stepping into something that can't be undone. But here's what's important. This fear isn't pushing them away. It's forcing them to decide who they want to become. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline." Fear reveals where discipline is required. They're noticing areas of immaturity they once ignored. Patterns that don't align with the life they want. Habits that feel incompatible with the future they're imagining. And you're the catalyst. Not by demanding change. By being unmovable in who you are. You're not bending yourself to be easier to choose. You're not shrinking your standards to be less threatening. You're standing still. And that stillness is powerful. Because it leaves them with only one question. Can I rise to meet this? They feel the tension between staying safe and stepping forward. Between familiarity and growth. Between who they've been and who they could be. That internal wrestling is exhausting. But it's also honest. They're praying differently now. Not asking for signs to avoid responsibility. Asking for courage to do what's right. Joshua 1 verse 9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Courage always comes before movement. They're imagining what it would look like to show up fully, to speak clearly, to take initiative. And then they imagine the cost of not doing it. Regret. Mistiming. Another what if added to the list. That possibility weighs on them. They know you're not waiting forever. They know you're not stuck. They know you're living your life with purpose. And that awareness adds urgency. Not desperation. Clarity. They don't want to approach you with fear disguised as caution. They don't want to hide behind timing as an excuse for avoidance. They want to move with integrity. But fear still whispers. What if I fail? What if I hurt them? What if I can't maintain this? Those questions aren't weakness. They're evidence of care. Someone who doesn't care doesn't count the cost. They leap without thinking. But someone who values what's in front of them pauses. And that's where they are. Standing at the edge of decision. You are not pressuring them. You're not chasing them. You're not waiting anxiously. You're living. And that's what's forcing the issue. They understand now that you're not an opportunity that will always be available. You're a person with direction. And if they want to be part of your life, they'll have to step into theirs. That realization is turning fear into focus. It's pushing them to choose courage over comfort. Action over hesitation. Truth over avoidance. And while fear hasn't disappeared, it's losing control. Because what they see in you is worth the risk. Number 7. They're moving toward you, and it's guided by reverence, not impulse. By now, everything inside them has shifted. They've recognized your character, your peace, your depth, your rarity, your presence that inspires healing, and the fear that comes from knowing loving you is serious business. And all of it has brought them to this action guided by reverence, not impulse. They're thinking, praying, and planning, but differently than before. They're no longer responding to attraction or convenience. They're responding to destiny. They're responding to alignment. This is a sacred moment. Not one defined by haste. Not one defined by words thrown recklessly into the wind. But a moment where your life has compelled them to step into intentionality. They can't approach you without preparation. They can't rush because they've learned the stakes. You're not someone to experiment with. You're someone to honor. Someone whose life is intertwined with purpose, faith, and a calling bigger than themselves. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." They are beginning to trust God with this connection. They are beginning to pray, seek guidance, and wait for the confirmation that their next steps are aligned with God's will, not just their desire. This isn't hesitation born of uncertainty. It's reverence born of recognition. They know that moving toward you isn't just a choice. It's a covenant. Even the thought of approaching you recklessly feels wrong. That reverence transforms everything they feel. Their admiration deepens into awe. Their desire becomes a disciplined longing. Their impulses are filtered through prayer, reflection, and patience. And that's why they can't stop thinking about you. Because what they feel isn't fleeting. It isn't entertainment or novelty. It's a response to something real, sacred, and permanent. They are considering the weight of loving you, and it is consuming their mind, shaping their heart, and redirecting their life. They're evaluating everything about themselves to meet the standard you represent. Not because you demanded it, but because you exist as a mirror of what they want to become. You are the proof that love can be whole, healing, and real. You are the evidence that someone can care deeply, act with integrity, and walk through life with calm confidence. They are learning to pause, pray, and prepare before making a move because they know this isn't ordinary. It isn't the kind of connection that can be rushed. Song of Solomon 8 verse 7 reminds us, "Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away." They are cultivating a love that survives, grows, and thrives. Not one that collapses under haste or impulse. And while they wrestle with their own fears, your presence continues to pull them forward. Every quiet act of strength you display, every boundary you maintain, every moment you show up with consistency and grace. Every time you walk your life with integrity, it calls them. They want to show up fully, not partially. They want to approach you with clarity, not confusion. They want to enter your life in a way that honors the divine work in both of you. That means preparation, patience, and prayer. It means choosing healing over avoidance. It means valuing you enough to meet you from a whole, grounded place. That's why they can't stop thinking about you. They aren't obsessed. They aren't chasing. They are wrestling, praying, and preparing. They are aligning themselves so that when the moment comes, they can step into it fully and intentionally. This stage is powerful because it signals movement. The transformation is happening quietly, but decisively. Your presence has been a catalyst for spiritual awakening, emotional growth, and intentional love. They are moving toward you with wisdom, courage, and discernment. And here's what you need to understand. You don't have to chase, convince, or manipulate. You don't need to perform or impress. Your consistency, character, peace, and depth have already initiated a process inside them. They are being drawn to you not by superficial attraction but by a recognition of your inherent worth, sacredness, and integrity. Psalm 37 verses 4 to 5 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him and he will act." Their movement toward you is God-ordained. It's not hurried. It's not accidental. It's deliberate and aligned with divine timing. So continue living in your light. Continue being whole. Continue honoring yourself, your faith, and your boundaries. Every moment you do that, you strengthen the pull of alignment and the preparation occurring in their heart. They may still hesitate. They may still wrestle. They may still feel unworthy. But the seed has been planted. The recognition has happened. The preparation is underway. And when they finally move toward you, it will be with clarity, courage, and reverence. Not out of desire alone, but because your life has revealed what true love requires, and they are ready to rise to that standard. Beloved, understand this. They are being undone by your presence, not by your effort. They are being stirred by your integrity, depth, peace, and rarity. They are being drawn into alignment, courage, and intentionality. You have already set in motion a divine process that will not be wasted. They are moving toward you. They are thinking of you. They are being transformed because of you. Your role is not to chase, not to prove, not to compromise. Your role is to remain steadfast, whole, and aligned. Because the right person, prepared by God and stirred by your presence, will move with reverence, not impulsivity. They will move with love, not fear. And they will arrive ready to cherish the depth, beauty, and sacredness they discovered in you. The discovery that changed everything. Beloved soul, let this settle in your heart. Everything we've spoken today is a reflection of your true worth, your sacred presence, and the divine recognition that's already at work in someone's heart. They have seen your character before your appearance. They have felt peace in your presence that exposed the noise in their own life. They have recognized your depth, understood your rarity, been stirred into healing, wrestled with fear, and now are preparing to move toward you with reverence and intentionality. Every single point connects to one undeniable truth. You are not ordinary, and you are being recognized in ways that go far beyond surface attraction. You don't need to chase, perform, or convince. The recognition has already happened. They can't stop thinking about you because what they discovered is real, sacred, and aligned with destiny. Your life, your integrity, your consistency, your capacity to love despite brokenness, your patience, your wisdom, your strength tempered with gentleness. These qualities have stirred a holy longing in someone who is being prepared to meet you fully. You are the standard, and the right person will rise to that standard, guided by clarity, courage, and reverence. Understand this, the process isn't random. It's not coincidence. It is divine alignment in action. As they move toward you, their heart is being shaped, their mind is being refined, and their intentions are being purified so that when they step into your life, it will not be half-hearted or impulsive. Psalm 27 verse 14 reminds us, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." Your waiting is not passive. It is active alignment. You are walking in your light, staying whole, growing, and reflecting the sacred beauty that has drawn them in. Your response is just as important as their preparation. Remain steadfast in your identity. Continue to honor your boundaries, your values, and the truth of who you are. Live in integrity and alignment. This is what will ensure that the eventual connection is not only powerful but lasting, built on mutual respect, spiritual maturity, and emotional wholeness. You are not required to lower your standard, compromise your peace, or rush to fill their process. The right person will rise to meet you, prepared and aligned with the destiny God has orchestrated. If this message resonates in your spirit, I encourage you to engage with it. Comment below with the words, "I am seen, and my light is awakening their heart," or share a moment when someone recognized your depth and integrity. Your testimony might inspire or awaken someone else who is waiting to be recognized in their own sacred beauty. Don't forget to like this video and click subscribe to Daily Motivation Prayers for you. Every subscription helps spread this message to souls who need to hear that they are not invisible, not overlooked, and not forgotten. If you feel led, send a super thanks. Your support helps create more content that delivers divine clarity, encouragement, and revelation about love, alignment, and destiny. Beloved, remember, they have seen your beauty, your strength, your peace, and your depth. They are being transformed by it. And soon the alignment will manifest. Stay faithful, stay whole, and let your life continue to reflect the sacred, enduring love that is calling them closer. You are not just seen, you are unforgettable.